they say that SEAL training is the hardest training in the world. So we're able to make it through that. But the truth is, we're not robots.
Welcome back, everyone. I am absolutely stoked to have Mr. Rob Sweetman on this episode, and he just had an extremely wildly successful event featuring a bunch of meat eaters, a bunch of strong men who came out there. They rose to the occasion. They were the men in the arena, and they participated in a grueling 62-mile course that he designed, he orchestrated, and he brought all of these pieces together to make something truly, truly incredible. Rob, I'm so glad to have you on the call. Thank you for putting this together and having me out there with you guys. You did a fantastic job.
I appreciate that. We're just taking a walk in the woods, man. Everybody showed up. They felt inspired. We couldn't have done it without the racers, couldn't have done it without you and all the other volunteers. So really, I didn't do anything except for just get out there for the dry run and walk it myself, and then just tell a bunch of people this is what we're going to do. So
it's fantastic. You led by example, like one of your core tenets. You're not going to ask anybody to do something that you're not willing to do yourself, and you did it. So I'm stoked on that. You had a lot of moving parts. You did, as your hat says, there's nothing like this. You put together categories that no one else is doing. You had live streams, you had live betting, you had race participants, you had challenges, you had all of these things. So tell me, from your seat, you were the driver on this. What was it like organizing this, and what were some of your key takeaways from that whole experience?
well, first of all, to the Colorado Gaming Commission, there's no betting, just predictions and part of a game system. They get touchy about that. But yeah, that's what we did. We allowed everybody to be involved because the whole mission here is not to beat a bunch of people down. In fact, I was surprised that half the teams didn't even make it halfway. I knew it was hard, but I guess maybe I'm just kind of crazy. I live out here in the wilderness. I thought it was fine, but it beat down half the teams. They didn't even make it halfway. And my hats are off to them because they showed up prepared and they gave it their best shot. But we had medical issues. We're taping up feet that are just falling apart. It's a lot of mileage, and it's not mileage on a track. It's out here in the wilderness. I mean, it's extremely uneven ground. We've got rocks and there's bits where you literally have to climb up. Limited water, variable heat temperatures, long distances. So I think to summarize, like why we did this, first of all, is to honor Ryan. Second of all, when we lost Ryan nearly 10 years ago, this next year is going to be the 10-year anniversary, so we're going to do it big. That spawned a lot of different things in your life, and in my life in particular. I took on a commitment towards sleep science. I wanted to figure out sleep science. I thought that had something to do with Ryan's mental health before his demise. And what I found out was that it actually is a big problem with a lot of us veterans as well as civilians. But anyways, in this mission to help people, what I figured out is that I'm not trying to preach. I'm not trying to label people. I'm just trying to bring them into the fellowship. And the truth is, a lot of times it's our thoughts and behaviors that lead us down a bad road, whether it's drinking alcohol or willfully sleep depriving, or sometimes it's even more subtle, little things we do, negative thoughts, negative behaviors. It just ends up being bad outcomes. And in fact, being in the city is half the problem. A lot of people swear by the city, they love it. But the truth is, it's chaotic on our nervous system. It's not natural. And I can prove that because every time I bring people out into nature, almost all of their problems vanish. And then they go back wondering, why am I not just staying here? So all of that's to say that we have a bunch of good people that came out and volunteered to be outdoors in nature for the Brotherhood, for the sisterhood. We have a bunch of racers that wanted to put their money where their mouth is, so to speak, and come out and try to race this thing. They came out for the nature and the Brotherhood and sisterhood. But then we also have the donors. So going back to that, the prediction system, little game that we put together, basically that brings in the donors who are often left behind. brings them right into the fold. And so now they can kind of play along and guess who's going to make it where, an educated guess based on their profile, their physical, what they've reported as their physical fitness, how the team is performing throughout the race. The donors can now be involved. And so what are we doing? We're bringing them into the brotherhood or the sisterhood. So yeah, we can talk about raising money for charity, which does have huge impact for the people who are benefactors. We have a sleep program and retreats that the money go towards. But in essence, we kept our mission very clear that, yeah, sure, we're going to run a race. We're going to do all this crazy stuff, but it all boils down to brotherhood and sisterhood out of nature. That's the recipe.
Absolutely. I love it. I love the community aspect that you're building. I love how you're helping integrate all of the different parties, every single individual, the racers, and how you're bringing people to nature and helping them reset their nervous systems with a lot of the sleep science options that you've got going on there. So, you mentioned it, you hit it on the head. It was excellent. You were talking about Ryan and how impactful his life was to you and how it has brought you down this path and you found a lot of success here. So whenever people hear SEAL teams and Navy SEALs, they picture movie stars, they picture Hollywood, but you and I, our experiences are a lot different. They're a lot more visceral. We were there in each of those platoon spaces, in the locker rooms, on the swims, on the beaches. We were there together. There were quiet moments. There were miserable, freezing nights. So, whenever you lean back into Ryan and you think back about those core memories, what's the exact image of him that pops into your head?
Well, Ryan was my older guy. So what that means is when we get into the SEAL teams, you show up as a new guy. And so the guys that are older are the ones that are already there in the platoon and they kind of bring you in. So I was a new guy. So I looked up to Ryan. I watched him. I learned from him. Even though numerically he was younger than me, I joined at almost 30 years old. I thought it'd be a good idea to wait until I was old and broken to join the SEAL teams. That was an interesting choice. But I learned a lot from Ryan because he was a sniper. He was a medic. He was a second generation SEAL. His dad, Frank, was a SEAL. And so he had this sort of knowledge and wisdom of what to do. I didn't have any of that. I never read any of the books. I never, I just showed up. I'm like, all right, let's do this. I considered the Marine Corps and maybe the Army, and I just ended up in the SEAL teams. So I had a lot to learn. And some of that was coming from Ryan, who, sometimes he was working Overwatch as a sniper in training. Sometimes he was helping out with the JTAC piece. Sometimes I think he went over to Tradet, was his last command after he was at SEAL Team 7 with me. But what I noticed that I think is kind of common for all of us going through training is, of course, all of us are tough as hell and we come from different walks of life. And it's often surprising to see the guys that make it. It's not always D1 athletes that look like movie stars. And there are some team guys that are movie stars. That's not me. That's not you. But they do exist. But most of us are just normal people. And we're going through this training and we have this will to continue. And for whatever reason, we have that switch that we can flip and we can make it through the most ridiculous things they say that SEAL training is the hardest training in the world. So we're able to make it through that. But the truth is, we're not robots. At times, maybe we think we are, but we are not. And we get broken down mentally, physically. We have orthopedic injuries. We have blast exposure. We have all types of issues that lead to poor sleep health, whether it's sleep apnea or partly TBI or other types of injuries pertaining to poor neurology. Dr. Chris Frueh would call it allostatic load, right? This guy wrote this thing called the operator syndrome. And what he talks about is this laundry list of stuff, which I named a few of those things. But what it does to us is it creates this allostatic load. It is this constant pressure. And then what happens after that? We don't know how to manage that. We're just humans, right? And we go to the high bay, like you said. We talk about things. We cover it up with jokes. Sometimes we turn to alcohol. Sometimes alcohol turns into an addiction. And sometimes some of our guys end up in suicide or in suicidal ideation or in a cycle of alcohol where we might become abusive or we might find ourselves in toxic situations, or we're just trying to overcome this constant pressure of this allostatic load. And so we're seeking adrenaline because the adrenaline can tip off this need to kind of like cover up this overbearing load that we're constantly carrying. And we're just human, right? And so just because people look up to us as SEALs doesn't mean that we're any better than any other person. We made it through a harder training, we have a higher qualification, and we're able to do things that maybe other units can't do, but we're all the same. We all sign the dotted line. We're all there doing the same thing. And for the most part, a lot of us face some of the same challenges, the entire veteran community. And what I've learned is that the first responder community is seeing a lot of the same issues. So, what I learned from Ryan was sure, I learned some tactics, some SEAL wisdom from that generational knowledge. But I think one of the biggest takeaways was watching the downfall of Ryan Larkin and still his guiding light to want a better situation for the next guy. And when Ryan took his life, that impacted me in a big way. And it absolutely brought me to a place where I didn't know up from down because my image of him at the time was that, he's untouchable. And if he's untouchable and this is the path that he went down, what does that mean for somebody like me who's just lost all the time, right? I'm not as good of a SEAL as Ryan Larkin, so maybe I'm next, right? It doesn't make any sense. So that messed with my head for a while. Since then, the echo of Ryan's story has been a part of my life in just about everything I do. I wouldn't say that I was Ryan's best friend. He was my older guy. He was more of a teacher mentor kind of role. I wouldn't say that I knew Ryan as well as other people, but what his legacy left with me has since changed the lives of hundreds of people through me. I guess you can say, a vessel for Ryan's message.
Yeah, you touch on a lot of really good topics there, and we'll pack a few of those. So, one of the things that you mentioned that was really a concern for you, a pressure point for you, was seeing someone that you looked up to, someone that you respected, someone that had been there, done that, and was the mentor type, leader type. And all of a sudden, he's facing all of these challenges and internal challenges that are out of his control. And it caused him to go into a tragic spiral. And you're seeing that, and you're seeing yourself, and you're putting yourself in those shoes and saying, "Hey, am I next?" And in a lot of ways, I can relate to that too, because whenever I hit my peak of my symptoms, and I was in a very acute phase of operator syndrome, complex PTSD, I was very scared myself. I did not see the way out either, and I'm like, it hit me like it's hit many of us, and the thought is in your head like, "Is this the rest of my life? Do I have to live the rest of my life at the very worst peak of these symptoms and not have a way out?" But you looked through that, you found a way out, and not just for yourself, but for others, and I think that's extremely, extremely noble of you, and I'm very grateful for you stepping into those shoes and taking on that task.
Thank you.
So you were talking in the teams and with us, physical fitness, physical toughness. It's a standard. We've got to be there. But there's other attributes within the teams and within the platoon that we all have to hold in order for it to be sustainable. There's character traits that get selected because it fosters the growth and the continuation of the community. And in my mind, knowing Ryan is maybe I didn't see this whenever I was hanging out with him through training, after training, at the SOCM course, but he definitely did hold these standards, and one of them that I've noticed is personal conviction. Are you able to tell me about a time where Ryan held a conviction that might have been unpopular, might have cost him something, but he stood his ground and he made sure that the right thing occurred regardless of maybe some wrongs going on around him?
Yeah, now that was Ryan's mode, right? Ryan stood by his values, and his father was a SEAL. He had some of that passed down, and then he learned some of it by being in the teams. So when I showed up, there was kind of a somewhat of a barrier between old guys and new guys. So what I saw, it was difficult to discern what was being shown to me and what went on in personal life. But based on what I could see from somewhat of a distance, being a new guy, was that Ryan did have those convictions and that Ryan stood by the values that we cherish in the SEAL teams. For example, one of them is honesty, right? Honesty is, and Senior Chief Oyos, he taught me that it's not just important to tell the truth, but to tell the truth quickly, right? You don't hold on to partial truth because then it becomes a white lie, right? So in the teams, things that Ryan exemplified, things that we should all exemplify as a team guy begin with honesty. Then there is reputation, right? Which means that reputation to me, in a way, is all the things that I can mention over a period of time, right? Observable that this is not just a show, this is who the person is. And then they build that reputation. So honesty, reputation. And then we had different kinds of team guys. Ryan was a single team guy, no, not married, no children, never saw the age of 30, and was in his prime. And so, but we have some guys that, you know, aren't necessarily as had the same values as Ryan at home or outside of work. And the reason I say that is because we have all types, right? So what you do in your personal life is kind of your business. We have a saying, it's like, I'd go to war with that guy, but I wouldn't let him hang out with my wife or watch my children, right? So the point of that is that while we're at work, we have an operational focus, right? Outside of work, we have a broad range of different personalities and lifestyles with team guys. But when you're at work, right, it's team gear first, then your buddy's gear, and then your own personal gear. And that leads to your reputation. If you're the guy that's going home early, you got your gear finished and cleaned and ready, IGM, I got mine, no one's going to like you. You lose trust, you lose your reputation, and you will eventually be outcast. It's the guys who maintain that level of dedication to the team that are going to focus on team gear first, whether it's repairing gear, stowing gear, packing gear, cleaning gear, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. The team gear comes first, and sometimes at the cost of your sleep, time with your family, that comes first. Then, when you're done with the team gear and you're onto your own personal gear, you make sure that your buddy's personal gear is done first. And in that way, we're always working together to make sure that we're one unified team. Then finally, after everything is done, you worry about your personal stuff. And this wreaks havoc on families, but that's what we live by in the SEAL teams, and that's what Ryan exemplified. I learned that from him. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, that is a big thing, is a foundational tenet of successful buds candidates and successful team guys. And like you said, it does have a cost, and that is a lot of that sacrifice that the casual observer might not see and might not understand. Because like you said, you're sacrificing sleep, time with family, time with other things to do the right thing for the mission, for the team, for the gear, etc. So whenever you saw him hold that line and set that standard and expect that standard for you and for the other new guys and even the rest of the platoon, what was that reaction from the rest of the platoon to that moral courage for him setting that standard and saying, "Hey, look, this is the expectation. This is where we need to be." How did that play out in, say, the new guys and then the rest of the platoon as a whole?
Well, what I observed